The Death World. The galaxy's most powerful leaders had gathered in the Grand Hall of the Galactic Council. It was a place where decisions about wars, alliances, and peace treaties were made. But today the topic was different, and far more terrifying. Projected in the middle of the room was a holographic image of a planet. Its surface was a mix of raging oceans, sprawling jungles, and massive deserts. The hologram flickered slightly, as if the planet itself was rejecting the Council's attempt to study it. The air was tense as the chief speaker, an elder alien with scales that shimmered like silver, began to speak. "This," he said, pointing to the planet, "is designation 9-4b, a death world." The room fell silent. Everyone knew what a death world was, a planet so hostile and dangerous that no civilized species could hope to survive on it. Death worlds were rare, and most were abandoned or left unstudied for fear of what they might contain. Another council member, a tall alien with glowing blue eyes, leaned forward. "Why are we discussing this? No one would be foolish enough to go near such a place." The elder nodded. "True, but this death world is different. It is not empty." The room erupted in murmurs. Not empty. That was impossible. Death worlds were uninhabitable. The elder raised his hand, and the room quieted again. "Our long-range scanners have picked up signs of life. Not primitive life forms, but intelligent life. Structures, technology, signals. Something is living there." The council members exchanged uneasy glances. For centuries, they had explored countless worlds, charting the stars and claiming territories. But a death world with intelligent life, that was unheard of. The elder continued, his voice grave. "We sent a scout drone to investigate. It did not return." A holographic recording played in the air above the council. It showed the drone's journey to the death world. As it entered the atmosphere, it was battered by violent storms. Lightning crackled across the screen, and winds howled like a living beast. The drone stabilized briefly, sending back images of the planet's surface. Towering mountains covered in snow, forests filled with trees that seemed to move on their own, and vast plains where creatures larger than any ship roamed freely. Then the screen went black. The recording ended abruptly. "This is all we have," the elder said. The drone was destroyed. But before it was lost, it detected something. An energy signature, a structure emitting signals. Someone or something lies there. A younger council member, nervous but curious, asked, "Could it be survivors? Perhaps another species stranded there?" The elder shook his head. "Unlikely. This energy signature has been active for centuries, perhaps longer. Whatever is there, it has adapted to the death world. Thrived in it." A tall reptilian alien named Vrek, a scientist known for her boldness, stood. Her voice was steady, but her tail twitched, a sign of unease. "If we leave this unanswered, it could be dangerous. Intelligent life on a death world could mean a threat to the galaxy. We need to investigate further." The room buzzed with agreement and dissent. Some argued that sending another mission was too risky. Others, like Vrek, insisted that the unknown could not be ignored. Finally, the elder raised his hand again, silencing the room. "Very well," he said. "We will send a small team. The best of the best. You will land on this death world and uncover the truth. But be warned, this is no ordinary mission. If you fail, there will be no rescue." Vrek volunteered immediately, her mind racing with questions. What kind of species could survive on such a planet? Were they hostile, friendly, or something entirely beyond understanding? She would find out, even if it cost her life. As the meeting ended, Vrek prepared her team. They were equipped with the best technology the Council had to offer: shields, scanners, and weapons designed to handle any situation. But as she boarded the ship, a deep unease settled over her. She couldn't shake the thought of the drone's final moments, the black screen that swallowed it whole. The journey to the death world was filled with tension. As the planet came into view, The crew gasped. From space, it looked beautiful. Blue oceans glittering under the light of its star, green continents stretching out like a paradise. But they all knew better. Beneath its beauty was danger, lurking in every corner. The ship trembled as it entered the planet's atmosphere. Storm clouds rolled in like angry waves, lightning flashing so bright it blinded the crew. The turbulence was unlike anything they had experienced. One of the crew members, a small alien with 6 arms, clutched his seat and muttered, "This place doesn't want us here." Finally, they broke through the storm and landed in a clearing surrounded by dense jungle. The air was thick and humid, carrying the scent of unfamiliar plants and animals. Strange noises echoed in the distance, growls, screeches, and something that sounded like deep, rhythmic breathing. As the team stepped out of the ship, the ground beneath their feet felt alive, pulsing faintly like a heartbeat. Vrek activated her scanner, and the readings were chaotic. Energy spikes everywhere, as if the planet itself was watching them. "This is it," she said, her voice steady but quiet. "The Death World." The crew exchanged nervous glances. One of them asked, "What do we do now?" Vrek looked toward the horizon, where a faint signal blinked on her scanner. "We find out who, or what, is living here." Unbeknownst to them, in the shadows of the jungle, something was already watching. The landing. The jungle was alive, not just with the sounds of distant creatures, but with an unnatural hum that seemed to resonate from the ground itself. Vrek and her team had barely set foot on the Death World when the ship's instruments started glitching. Lights flickered, scanners malfunctioned, and even their advanced communication devices struggled to maintain a signal. "This is not just a planet," Vrek muttered, staring at her malfunctioning scanner. "It's a living system, and it knows we're here." The team consisted of 5 members, each an expert in their field. There was Kale, the biologist, whose job was to analyze any life forms they encountered. Uren, the engineer, tasked with keeping their equipment functional. Mir, a combat specialist with reflexes sharper than any machine. And Tak, a linguist who could decode almost any language or signal. Each of them had faced dangerous missions before, but this one was different. There was no protocol for surviving the Death World. "Signals getting stronger," Uren said, his multi-eyed face glowing faintly in the dim light of the jungle. He pointed toward the east, where towering trees stretched into the sky like jagged spears. "It's coming from that direction." Vrek nodded. "Move carefully. We don't know what's waiting for us." They started their trek, weapons drawn and senses heightened. The jungle was dense, every step a battle against roots that seemed to coil and tighten around their feet. The air was thick, not just with humidity, but with an oppressive energy that made their skin crawl. As they moved deeper, the jungle's beauty began to shift into something more sinister. The plants glowed faintly, but their colors pulsed irregularly, almost like a warning. Flowers snapped shut as they passed, and vines swayed without any wind. Kale stopped to examine one of the plants, a vibrant red blossom with jagged edges. But as he reached out, the flower hissed and sprayed a fine mist into the air. "Don't touch anything," Vrek ordered sharply, pulling Kale back. The mist settled on a nearby rock, and within seconds, the stone began to dissolve. "This planet isn't just hostile. It's actively trying to kill us." The team pressed on, but the challenges only grew. At one point, the ground beneath them gave way, revealing a sinkhole filled with writhing, bioluminescent worms that snapped at the air with needle-like teeth. Meyer barely managed to pull Tak back before he fell in. "This is madness," Tak said, his voice trembling. "No species could live here. This isn't a world. It's a death trap." But Vrek's scanner told a different story. The signal grew stronger with each step, and the terrain began to show signs of intelligent design. Stone pathways, overgrown but unmistakably crafted by hands or claws, emerged beneath the foliage. Strange carvings adorned nearby trees, symbols that seemed to shift and change when viewed from different angles. "These aren't natural," Talk whispered, running his fingers over one of the carvings. His face twisted in confusion. "It's a language, but it's alive. The symbols are adapting to my thoughts." "Focus," Vrek said, pulling him away. "We're getting closer." The jungle opened suddenly into a clearing, and the team froze. Before them was a massive structure, a tower of black stone that seemed to absorb the light around it. It pulsed faintly, emitting a low-frequency hum that made the air vibrate. The tower was ancient, covered in vines and moss, but it was undeniably functional. Lights flickered from its base, and the signal on Vrek's scanner was blaring. "This is it," she said, her voice a mix of awe and caution. "The source of the signal." As they approached, the ground began to tremble. The tower's hum grew louder, almost deafening. Suddenly, a deafening roar erupted from the jungle behind them. The team spun around, weapons raised, as the trees shook violently. Emerging from the shadows was a creature unlike anything they had ever seen. It was massive, with a body covered in chitinous plates that glowed faintly with the same pulsating light as the tower. Its eyes were a brilliant white, scanning the intruders with unsettling intelligence. The creature let out another roar, its breath steaming in the cool jungle air. "Form up," Meyer shouted, raising her weapon. The team moved into a defensive formation, their advanced rifles trained on the beast. But before they could fire, the creature stopped. It tilted its massive head, as if studying them. Then, to their shock, it turned and began to circle the tower, almost protectively. "It's not attacking," Kale said, his voice barely above a whisper. "It's guarding the tower." "Guarding from what?" Vrek asked. Her question hung in the air as the ground trembled again, this time from beneath their feet. Urin's eyes widened as his scanner blared a new warning. Something else is coming. Something bigger. From the far edge of the clearing, another figure appeared. But this one was humanoid. It moved with the grace of a predator, its form wrapped in a makeshift armor made of bones and scaled hides. It carried a weapon that looked primitive but radiated energy that made their technology seem obsolete. The figure stopped a few meters away and raised its hand in what seemed to be a gesture of peace. Then, in a voice that was calm yet carried the weight of authority, it spoke. "You shouldn't have come here." The team stared, stunned. The voice was clear, familiar, and unmistakably human. First encounter. The clearing was silent except for the low hum of the tower and the distant growls of the jungle. Vrek and her team stared at the humanoid figure in disbelief. It was human, there was no doubt. But how could a human, of all species, survive on this death world? The human's eyes scanned them, sharp and calculating. The makeshift armor it wore seemed like a blend of natural and synthetic materials, held together with ingenuity born of desperation and survival. The weapon it carried hummed faintly, its edges glowing with a heat that suggested it could cut through anything. "You shouldn't have come here," the human repeated, this time with an edge of warning in its voice. Vrek stepped forward cautiously, lowering her weapon slightly. "We mean no harm. We're here to investigate. Who are you?" The human's expression was unreadable, but its posture remained tense, ready for a fight. "Names don't matter here," it said. "What matters is survival, and you've already lost that game by landing on this planet." Before Vrek could respond, the ground beneath their feet rumbled again. The massive creature circling the tower let out a guttural snarl, its glowing eyes locking onto the jungle behind them. Vrek's team spun around, their weapons raised, as the undergrowth exploded with movement. From the shadows emerged a pack of creatures, sleek, feline beasts with long tails that ended in sharp blade-like tips. Their bodies shimmered like liquid metal, adapting to the environment as they stalked closer. Their eyes glowed a predatory yellow, fixed on the intruders. "They've been tracking you since you landed," the human said, almost casually. "They're the least of your worries." "Help us, then," Vrek said, her voice steady despite the chaos unfolding. "We're not your enemy." The human tilted its head slightly, as if considering her words. Then, with a sigh, it stepped forward and raised its weapon. A burst of searing energy erupted from the blade, slicing through the air and forcing the pack of predators to scatter. The creatures growled in frustration, retreating back into the jungle. Vrek's team was stunned. "How did you?" No time for questions. The human interrupted, its tone commanding. "Follow me. If you stay out here, you'll be dead before nightfall." The human turned and began walking toward the tower. Vrek hesitated for only a moment before signaling her team to follow. The massive guardian creature, still circling the structure, watched them but made no move to attack. It seemed to recognize the human as an ally, or perhaps a master. As they entered the tower, the air changed. It was cooler inside, the oppressive humidity of the jungle replaced by a strange, sterile atmosphere. The walls of the tower were covered in intricate patterns, glowing faintly with a blue light that pulsed in time with the hum. Vrek's scanner struggled to process the energy readings, overwhelmed by the sheer complexity of the structure. "What is this place?" Talk asked, his voice filled with awe. The human didn't answer immediately. It walked to the center of the room, where a console of sorts jutted out of the floor. Placing a hand on it, the human activated a series of holographic displays. Symbols and images filled the air, too complex and alien for Vrek's team to comprehend. "This tower is part of a network," the human finally said. "It's old, older than your council, older than most civilizations in the galaxy. The beings who built it weren't like us. They didn't live. They didn't die. They created this world as a test." "A test for what?" Vrek asked, her voice barely a whisper. "For resilience," the human replied. "To see what species could endure the unendurable. They designed this death world to break everything that set foot on it. And then they left, leaving their creations to run wild." "And you?" Kale asked, unable to hide his curiosity. "How are you still alive here?" The human gave a bitter smile. "I wasn't born here. My ancestors crashed on this planet centuries ago. They were explorers like you, who didn't know what they were walking into. The death world killed most of them within weeks, but the ones who survived, adapted, evolved. We became part of this planet. Its dangers are our weapons. Its laws are our rules." Vrek's mind raced. This human wasn't just a survivor. They were a product of the death world, molded by its harsh environment into something more, something extraordinary. She stepped closer, her voice steady but urgent. "Then help us. We need to understand this place. The council needs to know what's here." The human's expression hardened. "The council? They've never cared about worlds like this. They'll strip it bare for resources or try to control it, like they do everything else. But this planet, it doesn't let itself be controlled. You think I'm your biggest problem. I'm the least of your concerns." "What do you mean?" Meyer asked. The human turned back to the console, pulling up a new display. This one showed a map of the planet, with glowing points scattered across its surface. Each point pulsed faintly, but one, near their landing site, flashed red. "You brought them," the human said darkly. "The tower isn't just a signal. It's a beacon. And now they're coming." "Who?" Vrek demanded. The human looked at her, eyes filled with a mixture of anger and fear. "The ones who built this place. They're still out there, watching. And you just told them the death world is awake. Humans of the death world." The silence that followed the human's words was deafening. Vrek's team exchanged uneasy glances, the weight of the revelation sinking in. The creators of this death world, beings who had engineered a planet to test the limits of survival, were still alive. And now, they knew someone had come to disturb their creation. The humans stood tall, their makeshift armor gleaming faintly under the blue glow of the tower's lights. They turned away from the console, their expression unreadable. "You've brought attention to this place. That makes you a problem. For me, and for them." Vrek stepped forward, refusing to be intimidated. If they're coming, we need to prepare. You've survived here for generations. You must have knowledge, resources, something we can use. The human's laugh was bitter, echoing in the hollow chamber. Knowledge, resources. That's what got us trapped here in the first place. Your council sent explorers, just like my ancestors. They came here thinking they could tame this world, only to realize it doesn't want to be tamed. You're still here, Meyer pointed out, her voice cautious but firm. That means you found a way. The human's gaze flicked to her, sharp and calculating. We didn't find a way. We became the way. This planet doesn't allow weakness, indecision, or failure. You adapt or you die. There's no middle ground. Talk. Ever the skeptic crossed his arms. And what exactly have you adapted to? The predators. The weather? That massive beast outside. How does any of this make sense? The humans stepped closer, their presence commanding despite the primitive appearance of their gear. They gestured toward the glowing patterns on the tower walls. You see this? It's not just decoration. This tower, and others like it, controls the ecosystem. The storms, the creatures, even the terrain. They're all part of a system designed to evolve in real time. The more you fight it, the more it fights back. Uren's multiple eyes widened as he examined the glowing walls. You're saying this entire planet is alive? The human nodded. Alive, aware, and unforgiving. It doesn't just test your body. It tests your mind, your will. It finds your breaking point and pushes you past it. That's what the creators wanted, to forge something stronger than nature itself. The team fell silent again, the gravity of the situation weighing heavy. Vrek was the first to break the quiet. If this planet is designed to adapt, then it can be beaten. You're proof of that. You've survived here. Thrived. That means we can too. The human's lips curved into a grim smile. You still don't get it, do you? This planet didn't let us survive. It changed us. We're not the same as we were when we landed. We're something else now. As if to emphasize their point, the massive creature outside the tower let out another low growl, its glowing eyes visible through the open doorway. The human raised a hand, and the creature immediately stopped, its body relaxing. It wasn't just guarding the tower, it was obeying the human. How? Kale began, but the human cut him off. We didn't tame them. We became part of their system. The predators here don't see us as prey anymore. They see us as equals or superiors. It's the only way to survive on this world. Vrek's mind raced. This wasn't just survival, it was dominance. The humans on this death world had not only adapted to its dangers, but had risen above them. They had turned the planet's lethal ecosystem into their ally. What about the creators? She asked. You said they're watching. What do they want? The human's expression darkened. They don't want anything. They're not gods or conquerors. They're experimenters. They built this world as a test, but they never expected anyone to beat it. Now that we have, they'll come back to see how far we've gone, and to stop us if we've gone too far. To stop you? Uren asked, confused. Why would they care? The human's gaze shifted to the console, where the holographic map of the planet still glowed faintly. Because this world isn't just a test. It's a proving ground. Whoever masters it becomes a threat to everything else in the galaxy, and they won't let that happen. Vrek felt a chill run down her spine. The implications were clear. If the creators returned, they wouldn't come as observers. They would come as destroyers. We need to leave, Tak said, panic creeping into his voice. We need to get off this planet before they arrive. The humans shook their head. You think leaving will save you? The moment you leave this world, they'll track you back to your council. They'll see your species as a threat, just like they see us. You've opened a door you can't close. So what do we do? Meyer asked, gripping her weapon tightly. Fight them. The human's grim smile returned. You don't fight the creators. you survive them. And if you're lucky, you make them regret ever underestimating you. The room trembled suddenly, a deep vibration that seemed to come from the very core of the planet. The human turned to the console, their face set in grim determination. They're coming. You've got hours, maybe less, before their ships reach this system. Vrek straightened, her resolve hardening. Then show us how to survive. Teach us what you know. The human hesitated for a moment, then nodded. Fine. But survival here isn't just about strength. It's about understanding the rules of this world and breaking them when it matters most. As the hum of the tower grew louder, Vrek and her team realized they weren't just fighting for answers anymore. They were fighting for survival and for the future of their entire species. Nightfall. The vibrations from the tower grew louder, resonating through the jungle like a drumbeat of impending doom. Outside, the air thickened, a dark haze settling over the clearing, as if the planet itself was bracing for what was to come. Vrek and her team stood inside the tower, their nerves on edge as the human prepared for what they ominously called the real danger. You think the jungle was bad, the human said, pulling a series of sharp, bone-like tools from a hidden compartment in their armor. Nightfall is when this planet shows its teeth. Everything you've seen so far, those predators, the storms, even this tower, that was just the warm-up. What do you mean? Urin asked, his voice tight with fear. The human didn't look up as they continued preparing. At night, the death world doesn't just adapt, it hunts. The creatures out there don't attack for food anymore. They attack for control, territory, dominance. And the ones that come out now, they're not like anything you've seen before. Vrek stepped forward, trying to steady her voice. If it's that dangerous, why haven't you left this planet? You clearly have the skills to survive elsewhere. The human finally looked up, their expression hard. You don't leave this world. It doesn't let you. The moment you step outside its boundaries, it follows you. Not physically, but in your mind, in your instincts. You're tied to it forever. Before Vrek could respond, the tower's hum shifted into a higher pitch. The human froze, their eyes narrowing. They're coming, they whispered. What's coming? Meyer asked, her weapon raised. The human gestured for silence, their hand gripping their weapon tightly. Not the creators. Not yet. It's worse. Suddenly, the massive creature outside let out a deep guttural roar, its glowing eyes fixating on the jungle. The team turned just in time to see the shadows between the trees shifting unnaturally, as if alive. Shapes began to emerge. Large, insect-like forms with exoskeletons that shimmered in the faint light. Their movements were jerky, almost mechanical, and their glowing eyes locked onto the tower. What are those? Kale asked, panic creeping into his voice. The human didn't answer. Instead, they raised their weapon and pointed it at the creatures. Stay inside the tower. Whatever you do, don't let them get too close. The first of the insect-like creatures charged, its legs moving faster than anything they had seen before. The ground shook with its weight as it lunged toward the tower. The human fired a burst of energy from their weapon, striking the creature dead center. It screeched, its body splitting apart in a flash of light. But two more took its place almost immediately. They're not natural, Urin muttered, his eyes wide as he scanned the creatures. They're constructs. Biomechanical. They're the enforcers, the human said grimly. The creators built them to clean up their experiments, like us. The team opened fire, their weapons blazing as they fought off the advancing swarm. The creatures were relentless, their sharp limbs slicing through the air as they charged. Despite their best efforts, more and more of the insect-like beings poured out of the jungle, their screeches blending into a deafening cacophony. Inside the tower, Vrek's scanner beeped frantically. The signal, it's changing. The human glanced at the console and swore under their breath. The tower's activating its defenses. It's calling reinforcements. Reinforcements? Talk asked, panicking. From where? The human didn't answer. Instead, they slammed their hand onto the console, forcing the holographic display to shift. A new map appeared, showing glowing points converging on their location. The largest of them was directly above. "They're dropping something," the human said, their voice low. "Something big." The team barely had time to process the words before the sky above the tower exploded with light. A massive object descended, its surface gleaming with an unnatural, shifting sheen. It was neither ship nor creature, but something in between, pulsing with an eerie energy. "What is that?" Vrek demanded. The human's face was pale, their usually confident demeanor shaken. "It's a purifier." "A purifier?" Kale asked. "What does it purify?" The human turned to him, their expression grim. "Everything. It resets the ecosystem, wiping out anything that doesn't fit the Creator's design, including us." The purifier began to descend, its energy field expanding outward. The creatures in the jungle screeched and scattered, but the field wasn't just targeting them. The plants withered under its influence, the ground cracking as the purifier's energy consumed everything in its path. "We have to shut it down," Vrek shouted, her mind racing. "Can the tower stop it?" The human hesitated, then nodded. "The tower's defenses can disrupt the purifier, but it'll take time. We need to keep the field from reaching us until then." Vrek turned to her team. "Hold the line. No matter what, keep those things away from the tower." The team braced themselves as the swarm of biomechanical creatures renewed their assault. The purifier's field grew closer, the ground beneath it turning to ash. Inside the tower, the human worked furiously at the console, activating long-dormant systems that lit up the walls with a brilliant blue light. "Almost there," they muttered, their fingers flying over the controls. "Just a little longer." Outside, Vrek and her team fought desperately, their weapons overheating as they fired into the endless swarm. Meyer took down 2 creatures with a single shot, but another lunged at her from the side, its blade-like limbs slashing through her armor. She screamed, but Kale was there, dragging her back and firing a blast that disintegrated the attacker. "We can't hold them much longer." Urin shouted, his voice strained. "Keep fighting." Vrek yelled, her own weapon glowing red-hot from overuse. "We have no choice." Inside the tower, the humans slammed their fist onto the console. The walls of the tower pulsed, and a shockwave of energy erupted outward, striking the purifier. The massive object shuddered, its energy field flickering as it struggled against the tower's defense. "It's working," the human shouted. "But it's not enough. We need more power." Vrek's eyes darted to the glowing console, her mind racing. "What if we overload the tower, channel all its energy into one blast?" The human hesitated, then nodded. "It'll destroy the tower, but it might just work." "Do it," Vrek said firmly. "We don't have another choice." The human entered a final sequence of commands. The tower's hum rose to a deafening pitch, the blue light intensifying until it was blinding. The purifier trembled as the energy wave struck it, a crack appearing in its smooth, shifting surface. Then, with a sound like tearing metal, the purifier exploded, its pieces scattering across the jungle. The shockwave knocked everyone to the ground, and for a moment, all was still. The creatures retreated into the jungle, their screeches fading into the distance. The purifier was gone, and the death world was silent once more. Vrek struggled to her feet, her body aching from the blast. "Is it over?" The humans stood, their face unreadable. "For now. But the creators will know we destroyed it, and they won't let that go unanswered." The truth about the death world. The ruins of the destroyed purifier still glowed faintly in the clearing, casting strange, dancing lights across the jungle. The air was heavy, not with danger, but with anticipation, a silence that felt like the calm before a storm. Vrek and her team regrouped inside the tower, their bodies battered, their minds racing with questions. The humans sat near the console, their face grim, eyes scanning the readouts. The console flickered, showing a series of strange symbols interspersed with galaxy-wide maps. Finally, the humans spoke, their voice low but steady. "They'll be here soon." The purifier was only the beginning. "You mean the creators," Vrek said, leaning on a piece of rubble for support. "What exactly are they? Why go to such lengths to build a place like this?" The human glanced at her, hesitating before responding. "The creators aren't like anything you've faced before. They're not a species or a civilization. They're architects. They build, observe, and destroy. They'd been shaping worlds for longer than your council has existed. This death world was one of their early projects, but it wasn't meant to support life. It was meant to crush it." Tak stepped forward, his voice edged with defiance. "Then how did your people survive? How did you overcome what the creators designed?" The human's bitter laugh echoed through the chamber. "We didn't overcome it. We became part of it. My ancestors learned the hard way that this planet doesn't forgive mistakes. We didn't change the death world. It changed us." "Changed you how?" Kale asked, his curiosity overriding his exhaustion. The human stood, moving to the console and pulling up a hologram. It showed a human figure, ordinary at first, but then it began to change. Muscle mass increased, senses heightened, and reflexes sharpened to a degree that surpassed anything natural. "This is what the death world does to those who survive it," the human explained. "It forces you to evolve or die. The ones who couldn't adapt didn't last long. The rest of us, well, we became something the creators didn't expect." Vrek's eyes narrowed. "You're saying your people are a threat to them?" "Not just us," the human said, their gaze intense. "Anyone who learns the rules of this planet and masters them becomes a threat. That's why the creators are coming, to ensure their experiment stays under control." The console beeped sharply, drawing everyone's attention. A holographic map of the death world flickered to life, showing dozens of glowing red points converging on their location. "They're here," Uren whispered, dread lacing his voice. Vrek turned to the human, her expression resolute. "You said the death world changed you. Does that mean we can use it against them?" The human's lips twitched into a grim smile. "Now you're starting to think like a survivor." "The plan." The human outlined their plan quickly. The creators' ships weren't just vessels. They were biomechanical constructs, much like the purifier. They were programmed to neutralize threats, but they weren't immune to the deep world's influence. "This planet reacts to intrusion," the human explained. "We'll lure the creators' forces deeper into the jungle. The death world will do the rest." "Are you saying we turn the planet itself into a weapon?" Meyer asked, her tone incredulous. The human nodded. "Exactly, but it won't be easy. We'll need to activate more towers. They're the key to controlling the planet's defenses." Vrek scanned the map. "How many towers are there?" 7, the human said. "We need to activate at least 3 more to trigger a planetary response strong enough to repel the creators." "That's suicide," Tak muttered. "We barely survived reaching this one." Vrek's voice cut through the tension. "It's our only chance. If we don't stop them here, they'll follow us back to the council and wipe us out. We fight here, or we lose everything." The jungle's wrath. The team moved quickly, guided by the human. The jungle, hostile before, now seemed almost alive with purpose. The ground shifted beneath their feet, creating new paths that led them toward the next tower. The predators, once their enemies, now seemed to avoid them, their glowing eyes watching from the shadows. "This planet knows what's happening," the human said as they trekked through the dense foliage. "It's adapting, just like it always does." As they approached the second tower, the sky above them split open. Massive, sleek ships descended, their surfaces rippling like liquid metal. The creators' forces deployed swiftly, humanoid constructs with perfect symmetry and glowing, featureless faces. They moved in eerie unison, their weapons humming with destructive energy. The human raised a hand, signaling for silence. "Let them come closer." The constructs advanced, their movements precise and mechanical. The jungle seemed to hold its breath. Then, as if on cue, the ground erupted beneath the invaders. Massive roots, thick as starship hulls, burst from the soil, wrapping around the constructs and dragging them into the earth. The jungle roared to life, its creatures joining the fray. Predators attacked in coordinated packs, tearing through the constructs with primal fury. "The death world is fighting back," Kale said, awe in his voice. "And it's just getting started," the human replied. The second tower. Reaching the second tower was no easier. The constructs adapted quickly, countering the jungle's defenses with devastating precision. Vrek's team fought desperately, their weapons barely holding the line. Urin used his engineering skills to rig an explosive trap, buying them precious time to reach the tower. Inside, the human activated the console, their movements practiced and efficient. The tower hummed to life, its energy spreading like a wave across the jungle. The predators grew bolder, their attacks more coordinated. The air itself seemed charged with electricity. "One more tower," the human said, their voice steady. "We're almost there." A new threat. As they made their way to the third tower, the ground trembled violently. From the jungle emerged a new enemy, a massive construct, its form shifting and unstable, as if it were a fusion of organic and mechanical parts. Its glowing eyes locked onto the team, and it let out a deafening roar. "That's not one of the usual enforcers," the human said, their voice tight. "It's something new." "What do we do?" Meyer shouted. The human gritted their teeth. "We improvise." Using the death world's terrain to their advantage, the team lured the massive construct into a swamp. Vrek activated a trap, causing the ground to collapse beneath the creature. As it sank, the human threw a blade-like device into its core. The explosion that followed was deafening, but the construct was destroyed. "We're running out of time," Vrek said, her voice strained. "Let's move." The final tower. As they reached the third tower, the sky above them lit up. More ships descended, their presence an ominous reminder of what was at stake. The human worked quickly, activating the tower's defenses. The ground shook violently as the death world responded, its full power unleashed. The jungle erupted in chaos. Storms raged, creatures attacked with terrifying precision, and the very air seemed to pulse with deadly intent. The creator's ships began to falter, their forces overwhelmed by the death world's wrath. "It's working," the human said, their voice triumphant. "The planet is dragging them back." But as the final tower activated, a new signal appeared on the console, something massive, far larger than the ships they had faced so far. The human's face fell. "They're sending their flagship." The final choice. The sky above the death world darkened as the creator's flagship descended. It was a monstrosity of shifting metal and organic tendrils, pulsating with energy that distorted the air around it. Its size dwarfed the jungle below, and its presence sent ripples of unease through the planet itself. Even the predators, fearless until now, retreated into the shadows, sensing the arrival of something beyond their understanding. Inside the final tower, Vrek and her team stared at the holographic display in stunned silence. The human clenched their fists, their eyes locked on the flagship as it loomed over the jungle. "This is it," the human said, their voice low but steady. "The creator's flagship isn't just a weapon. It's their control hub. If we don't stop it here, they'll reset the entire planet, and us along with it." "How do we fight that?" Urin asked, his voice tinged with despair. "It's too big, too advanced." Vrek's gaze hardened. "We don't fight it directly. We use the death world." The human nodded, understanding her meaning. "The towers are linked. If we overload them, we can trigger a chain reaction. The planet's defenses will converge on the flagship, treating it as the ultimate threat." Tak frowned. "And what happens to us when the towers overload?" The human's expression darkened. "We don't survive." A heavy silence fell over the group. Meyer was the first to speak. So that's it. We sacrifice ourselves to save the Death World. It's not just about the planet, Vrek said firmly. If we don't stop the creators here, they'll move on to other worlds. Entire civilizations could be destroyed. This is bigger than us. Cal's voice was shaky but resolute. Then we do it. We finish this. The final stand. The human led the team through the jungle toward the final relay point, where the tower's core could be overloaded. The Death World seemed to sense their desperation, the terrain shifting to help them move faster. But the creators' forces were relentless. Constructs swarmed from every direction, their glowing forms cutting through the dense foliage. The team fought with everything they had. Uren rigged traps from the debris of fallen constructs, slowing the advance. Meyer held the line, her weapon blazing as she protected the others. Cal used his knowledge of biology to target the construct's weak points, and Talk provided cover fire. Vrek and the human reached the relay point, a glowing core deep within the jungle. The console there was ancient, its symbols flickering as if resisting their touch. "Can you activate it?" Vrek asked, her hand steady despite the chaos around them. The human nodded. "I can. But once the overload starts, there's no turning back." "Do it," Vrek said, her voice unwavering. The human began working the console, their movements precise and practiced. The ground beneath them trembled as the tower's energy began to build. Overhead, the flagship seemed to sense the danger. It shifted, its tendrils extending toward the jungle, emitting waves of energy that disintegrated everything in their path. "We've got incoming," Meyer shouted over the comms. "They're targeting the relay." Vrek turned to the human. "How much longer?" "Minutes," the human said, their focus unbroken. "Just hold them off." The planet fights back. As the flagship's energy waves grew closer, the Death World unleashed its fury. Massive roots erupted from the ground, wrapping around the constructs and pulling them into the earth. Storms raged across the jungle, lightning striking with pinpoint accuracy. Even the predators joined the fight, their primal instincts aligned with the planet's will. But the flagship was relentless. Its tendrils pierced the jungle, aiming for the relay. One slammed into the ground just meters away, sending Vrek and the human flying. "Are you okay?" Vrek shouted, helping the human to their feet. "Keep it distracted," the human yelled, returning to the console. Vrek grabbed her weapon and joined the fight. Her team was battered but unyielding, fighting with a determination that defied the odds. Uren detonated a trap, taking out a swarm of constructs, while Meyer and Cal held the line against another wave. Finally, the human shouted, "It's done. The overload has started." The last choice. The ground began to shake violently as the tower's energy surged. The flagship, sensing the danger, redirected all its focus to the relay. Tendrils rained down, tearing through the jungle as it tried to stop the inevitable. "We need to go," Talk shouted, panic in his voice. "There's no time," the human said, stepping away from the console. "The overload will destroy everything in its radius, including us." Vrek looked at her team, their faces filled with a mix of fear and resolve. She turned to the human. "Can the tower's energy be channeled, redirected into a single attack?" The human hesitated, then nodded. "It's possible, but someone would have to stay behind to guide it." Vrek didn't hesitate. "Then I'll do it." "No," the human said firmly. "This is my world, my fight. You and your team need to leave. The galaxy needs to know what happened here." "But you," Vrek began, but the human cut her off. "This is what the Death World made me for. To fight, to survive, and to protect it." Vrek's chest tightened, but she knew there was no time to argue. "Thank you," she said, her voice heavy with emotion. The human gave a faint smile. "Don't waste this chance. Tell your council the truth, and make sure they never come back." The endgame. As Vrek and her team retreated, The human activated the final sequence. The tower's energy converged, creating a massive pulse that surged through the jungle. The flagship trembled as the defy's full power struck it, tearing through its defenses. The ship's tendrils writhed and collapsed as the planet's wrath consumed it. From a safe distance, Vrek and her team watched as the flagship disintegrated, its pieces raining down in fiery streaks. The towers collapsed one by one, their energy spent, leaving the jungle silent once more. Vrek felt a pang of grief as she realized the human was gone, their sacrifice ensuring the survival of the Death World and the galaxy. Epilogue. Back aboard their ship, Vrek transmitted a full report to the Council, detailing everything they had learned. She left out one crucial detail: the location of the Death World. As far as she was concerned, the planet deserved its secrets. As the ship left the system, Vrek stared out the viewport, the image of the Death World fading into the void. She whispered softly, "Thank you." Far below, the jungle thrived, its silence a testament to the resilience of those who had fought to protect it. And in its heart, the Death World waited, alive and undefeated, ready for whatever challenge the galaxy might bring next. The end.